I'm Spaceship, and today I decided that I have enough of dwelling in the past. It's about time to talk about the future. No, not this future, but still Ratchet and Clank future. And the absolute dread I'm filled anytime I think about it. So welcome to my first ever top 10 of the things that I'm the most afraid of happening in the future of Ratchet and Clank. I might need to work on the title though. So the order was not determined definitely by how bad the thing I'm talking about would be, but more of how emotional it makes me. So the big factor is how plausible it is that the said thing will happen. I think I might have just made it more complicated while trying to explain it. Let's better just start. Number 10! More of the same. And when I say that, I mean the same mistakes. Mediocrity multiplied, stagnation, especially when it comes to characters. Flanderized and unable to change or develop, locked in black and white morality without any actual nuance, with plot armor and plot conveniences pushing them through instead of consequences of their actions, and tell instead of show. I'm just scared that because of the praises the last game got, we're just gonna keep on playing it safe. Even though there was a ton of things needing fixing. Because hey, it didn't hurt the sales, so why bother? So overall, just continuing on the same path without any improvements.
And I swear to God, if somebody's gonna say that it's gonna have improvements because it's gonna have better graphics, I'm gonna find you and then I'm gonna...
Number 9. Ratchet and Clank are gonna get separated again, and or Clank is gonna be completely irrelevant to the actual plot. This entry is only so low on this list because they did the exact same thing last time. And I believe that they're gonna give us at least one game of break from this trope before they do it again. Of course, there's a possibility of Ratchet and Clank being captured somewhere and unable to do anything, but we're gonna talk about this possibility later. But yes, sadly, in the last game, not only Ratchet and Clank were separated, but Clank was also absolutely useless, unlike in A Crack in Time, where his levels really stood on their own. Not to mention that it was actually part of the plot and build up drama, and it was great. Because there we had actually two plots unfolding of Ratchet and Clank. But sadly, these days, Clank is just a backpack. A cute accessory, an excuse for our actual protagonists to have someone to talk to. So as much as I think that Clank and Ratchet are gonna stay together in the next game, I fear that Clank's role of main character's best friend is gonna stay that way, sadly. Insomniacs just don't know what to do with him anymore. After completing his clock arc. He used to be Ratchet's voice of reason, but since Ratchet is now Ratchet's voice of reason, Rivet is absolutely perfect, Kit is there is nothing for him to do, except for needing to be saved. And don't tell me that, but Clank had his mini-games in Rift Apart, because seriously, the hacking minigames were more useful when it comes to the plot and gameplay. But after that, Clank is just there, and it's not always even. But the relationship between the two, between Ratchet and Clank, used to be the core, the heart of the series. But now there is no relationship. No conflict, no nothing. But yeah, separating Ratchet and Clank, needing to save Clank, and having him be absolutely irrelevant. That was number 9. Number 8! Ratchet's long-lost relative or microtransactions. These two are on the same spot because they're basically as plausible as the other. We've already got the pre-order skins for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, but I doubt they would go full-on microtransactions unless they'll make another multiplayer mode, which would be actually cool, pretty fun. I know many people loved multiplayer mode in other Ratchet and Clank titles, and it's a great franchise to have that, but microtransactions are stinky. Let's just leave it at that and focus on Ratchet's long-lost relative. It could be an uncle, it could be a long-lost sister, and for fuck's sake, if Rivet's gonna be Ratchet's long-lost sister that Caden sent to another dimension than Ratchet just to keep them safe, I'm gonna lose it, and I swear it's gonna end with violence. Or maybe evil stepbrother, or evil twin brother. Or maybe his mom is still alive, or his grandparents, someone. But it's such a tired and pathetic trope when you have nothing else to add to the drama. And no, Alistair doesn't count. He was his father's best friend and a great character. He was Sirius Black to Ratchet's Harry. But long-lost relative is just such a fanfic-like trope. But sadly, in this day and age, many things are just like pathetic fanfiction. But yes, finding Lumbaxes is basically inevitable, and if we find some kind of Ratchet's long-lost relative, or even Rivets at that point, it's just something I fear. Because it's really hard to execute well this trope, and I really honestly and truly don't believe that it would be executed well in this franchise. At least not today.
Number 7!
Gimmick over plot and characters. We all know how Rift Apart was basically a glorified tech demo for PS5. In marketing, the biggest focus was put on the graphics of the game and on the changing dimensions within the level, without any load screens, even though the game has plenty of load screens. When on PS2, Jack and Daxter managed to abolish them, and in A Cracking Time we had the almost exact same system of jumping into portals to the past versions of the levels. You know, jumping from past to future and changing them and interacting. It was basically the same type of environmental puzzle, but in my opinion done less spectacular, but better when it comes to gameplay, because you had to have two versions of the level interact with each other. Like you planted a seed in the past, so you could have a plant to climb and reach certain areas in the future. But getting back to the point, the graphics and that gimmick was basically the smoke bomb hiding the actual lack of plot, characterization and care put into the game. In my opinion! And I fear that the next game is gonna have the same thing. We're gonna get a new or slightly changed old gimmick, and it's gonna be the main point of the marketing, and everything else, you know, characters, plot, it's all gonna be an afterthought. They're gonna focus on rendering the fur, maybe fix the clipping of cloths, new skins, armors, customization of the ship, stuff like that. But the actual core of the game, that's an afterthought. I mean, after all, we do live in the forsaken age of Fortnite, and art is dying. Moving on. Build your own hero! So basically Sonic Forces. I'm scared that when we finally meet the Lumbaxes, whenever and however that will happen, we'll talk about it later, we're gonna get basically a Sonic Forces game, where at the beginning you customize your own Lumbax protagonist, who will accompany Ratchet and Clank on their mission. Maybe even replace Ratchet with Clank on their back, because they got separated. Again! So basically Rivet mixed with V from Cyberpunk. And of course your character would be absolutely 100% just like Ratchet in terms of gameplay. So maybe sometimes you can even switch between them to just push a story just slightly a little bit. Actually, this is a very terrifying thought, but it's so low on this list because I feel that it might never happen. Unless in multiplayer mode. Maybe if we get to the Lumbaxes in some game, there would also be a multiplayer mode where you just make your own custom Lumbax and fight it out with other players. With a lot of microtransactions for customization, weapons, gadgets, hairstyles, fur patterns and stuff like that. And honestly, in multiplayer, I'd accept that. I'd happily accept that. But never in the main games. I mean, the title is Ratchet and Clank, but my fear is that if we get an avatar character, then they would just function like a camera, observing the events of the game. Of course, fighting and shooting, but not having any meaningful interactions with characters, any meaningful character growth, and no meaningful impact on the plot. Or, worse, the plot would be revolving only around this character, but with them being completely customizable, it would most likely be a mess.
Number 5.
Nefarious as a Saturday morning cartoon villain again. Look, I've already talked in length about this, about the issue of mis and overuse of Dr. Nefarious. So if you want to understand my point of view in detail, go ahead and watch my video about this. There should be a link somewhere on the screen at this moment. But to summarize quickly, ever since the beautiful finale of A Cracking Time, Dr. Nefarious has been on a slippery slope of huge decline in character. His presence lost any type of meaning. He became a Power Rangers villain, but instead of having a new threat every week, it's just him, each and every time. And each and every time he gets weaker and more pathetic. He used to be a very good character, who was actually a threat and a challenge to our heroes, and us as players. But now, he's sadly just a joke. And never was it more apparent than in All For One, but also Rift Apart, where he was constantly put down and humiliated by the Giga Chat version of himself, Emperor Nefarious. And that also goes for him. If now the Emperor becomes the reoccurring villain, I'm gonna be very angry and sadly not disappointed. We're in a halfway on our list, and now we have things that are very plausible, and that's why they're scaring me even more. Because the Emperor had a great reception, and rightfully so, he was fun. But too much of a good thing can make your tummy ache, and I really don't want to see Dr. Nefarious be constantly abused throughout another game. But we all know they're gonna play it safe. They play safe everything right now, and let's be honest, they're not gonna make Dr. Nefarious switch sides or anything, or progress as a character in any meaningful way, because they can't do that even with our heroes. So I'm not even asking for that. All I'm asking for is a new villain. Please, just leave a poor old man alone for one title. Please. Captain Quark is not mentioned ever again, or, in the worst case scenario, replaced with Captain Quantum the Hot Cheeto. Sadly, the amazing actor behind the voice of Captain Quark, Jim Ward, God, I hope I pronounced it right, I'm sorry if I didn't, in 2021 developed severe health problems, which made it necessary for someone else to record Quark's lines for Rift Apart. It was stated that he most likely will not come back to the voice acting career. And of course, health is the most important thing. That being said, I really don't want Captain Quark to be permanently recasted. I feel like that would be a huge injustice. I mean, Jim Ward made this character. The mannerisms, the tone of the voice, and of course, it can be successfully mimicked, but it's not gonna be the same, and it shouldn't be attempted if it doesn't have to be. I'm pretty sure that in Rift Apart they had no choice because they were just so deep into development already. But in the future, they can avoid that. But if Captain Quark was mentioned that he's, I don't know, on tour or like focusing on his movie career, that would be okay. Like he completely retired from being a hero and now is just an actor. And for that we can still get a lot of Easter eggs with him, like movie posters, billboards, commercials and stuff like that. What would be the absolute worst possible option is if he was replaced with Captain Quantum from Rivet's dimension. If there, for example, was being said that they switched places, that Quark is now a hero and celebrity in Rivet's dimension, and Captain Quantum is following Ratchet and Clank around. That would be bad, especially for my mental health, because I cannot look at this guy. Like, seriously, the color theory is killing me! I mean, out of all of the alternative dimension versions of our characters, Captain Quantum is the absolute cheapest copy of them all. He's just recolored Quark. And that's it. That's honestly it. There's nothing more there. Even Rivet had more. And I feel like just slapping Captain Quantum in the place of Quark would be the most disrespectful thing. Not only to the actor, but also to the character itself. Quark has been with us since the beginning, and just switching him up is not something that I would accept. Numer 3. Interdimensional mess continues, and other world building stuff. I already made an entire analysis of how Rift Apart has wrecked the world building of Ratchet and Clank universe, or actually multiverse. So if you want to hear about that, there's gonna be a link somewhere to that video. But what I fear most is that we're gonna get more of that. More of ignoring already established rules and putting rule of cool over everything else. Even if the solution is right there to fix it and explain how it all works. I'm scared we're gonna get another retcons, but not in a 2016 way. I'm afraid of retcons like Angela Gate. You know, the entire thing about her being and not being, and then probably not being a Lumbax, and female Lumbaxes and their tails, and just a mess. Even though just saying something like, yeah, she was half a Lumbax would just fix everything. But no, we have to just go deeper and deeper into that nonsense. And we're like hinting about Angela even when Rivet never seen another Lumbax. And look at that, she's a female and she has a tail. Like, that just seems like a legitimate trolling. They just think they're so clever adding to that fire, and it's just tiring at this point. At least to me. And you know why this entry is only on the bottom of the podium? One, because I kind of just accepted it already. They just don't care. You can see it clearly. They just don't care. And they don't want you to care. So why bother? And two, because I'm convinced that it's gonna happen. We're not gonna get anything better. And it's on the third place because it's not scaring me as much as it saddens me. Number 2! Lumbaxes are the holy Kryptonians. Basically, throughout the entirety of the series, we are being fed basically propaganda that Lumbaxes are this amazing and technologically advanced race, the absolute peak of developed society. They had all the best culture, all the best inventions, and they're gone. They are the lost empire. And they were defeated by one bug guy with a Napoleon complex, who was then defeated by just one Lumbax without all of their technology, armies, and stuff. But let's say that Tachyon used up all of his resources while taking over and maintaining the rule over Polaris Galaxy. But that's not my point. My point is that we had this clear picture of Lumbaxes being those amazing and noble heroes of the galaxy. So there is Ratchet and Rivet, who were destined to be great heroes, just like their ancestors, just like their entire species. They were destined to be inventors, amazing engineers, and wonderful, heroic people. And I hate this narrative! This idea that some races are evil and some races are good, some races are heroes and some races are villains. Not only does it sound kind of like a preaching of a certain Austrian short mustache guy, but it's also such a boring and 0 to 1 idea and way of thinking. You know, I really like the chosen one trope when it's done right, but not when it's framed like that. I love Ratchet and Clank because they were not meant to be heroes. Ratchet wasn't born a hero. He became one because of the circumstances and his own choices. Because he chose not to be selfish, because he chose to help, not because it was in his blood. And okay, Lumbaxes may have a tinkering tendencies, that's fine, but explaining away the fact that somebody made themselves a right hand while being right-handed because they are of a certain race sounds like a racial stereotype, actually. And I know, it's just a simplification, but they are main characters. We don't need to oversimplify main characters. We have time and resources to develop them. We already had a complex Lumbax, a morally grey character. We had Alistair, who was also hyping up the Lumbax society, but that might be because he was raised in it. I would give up my left hand to have Lumbaxes be evil. Not mustache-twirling Saturday morning cartoon evil, but a society who wrote the history because they were always the winners in it. So they painted themselves always as the good guys, while being the actual oppressors. And maybe even most of their society didn't realize that, because they were fed the propaganda of them being those great people, that their oppression is actually not oppression, it's protection. They're not taking over those planets, they're helping them develop. and stuff like that. And we can have Ratchet and Clank being from the outside and looking at the society and seeing that they're not all they were painted to be, that they're not heroes, that they left the universe with the problem they themselves created to just hide their kind, because there is nothing more important than the survival of the Lumbax society. Something like that, it would fit with the lore and what we already know and were told in those games. It would be an interesting twist, not just a ha I am your father twist, but an actual twist that would make us think back on the previous titles and be like, wait a minute, whoa, it was all there! And it's also a great commentary and a moral. Don't believe that someone is great just because they tell you so. Cancel culture, all of that. Not to mention, we can have something to actually challenge our characters. Ratchet also believed in that idolized version of Lumbaxes, and having that picture shattered can be a great character development moment. Learning that being Ratchet is more important than being the Lumbax named Ratchet. That your stripes do not define you, but your actions and choices you make. But let's not fool ourselves. Lumbaxes are gonna be either under some evil thing that's gonna have to be destroyed and they're gonna have to be freed from it, or the home they made for themselves is gonna be an absolute utopia, full of technological marvels, kind and heroic people, wise and just government. And the only dilemma we're gonna be presented with is gonna be if Ratchet's gonna stay with them and be happy with his people where he actually belongs, so Clank can go to the Great Clock and they can fulfill their destinies, or if they're gonna stay together and help those in need in our dimension. And it's very plausible it's gonna happen, and that's what I'm afraid of. Number 1! Rivet strikes back! I don't think I have to explain my emotions when it comes to a certain female Lumbax, because I've made a one long video about her. And if you haven't listened to it, then go ahead, the link will be somewhere here right now. I've put most of my feelings and thoughts into that video, and I really don't feel like repeating all of it right now. So let me just say, I don't like her a lot, for many reasons. But what I'm afraid of is bait and switch. I'm afraid that what happened in Rift Apart, with Rivet being first, front and center everywhere and overshadowing every character, is not only gonna continue, but it's gonna get worse. Ever heard of what happening in MCU? Of replacing heroes with their newer, flatter counterparts? I'm afraid that we're on our way to do just that. To change Ratchet and Clank into Rivet and Friends. Because let's be honest, they're not gonna give Kid the respect she deserves. She's not marketable enough to fairies. I would actually prefer for Rivet to get her own game, a little side story like Quest for Booty with Rivet and Kid. Because in her own adventure, her own story, she's not gonna be taking someone else's place without asking. She's not gonna be taking focus from someone else. She's gonna be the focus. So maybe the writing will be more, well, focused. And who knows, maybe she can even develop, even though I doubt that. More likely than not, her side story would be just another power fantasy. But that would be okay. That would be a spin-off. That's not what I'm afraid of. I'd be fine with that. What I'm afraid of is not a spin-off, is a spin-on. What I'm actually afraid of is Rivet officially becoming the main character. Ratchet retiring or becoming just a support or a background presence, and River girl bossing through. Because of all the reasons that I've listed in my other video, she's a terrible protagonist material. A textbook example of a Mary Sue. And I'm really honestly scared that that's the direction they want to go. Like, they're taking baby steps there, but they're going there. If Ratchet was her mentor in Rift Apart, then maybe that direction would be more justified, but not having her just swoop in and take the spotlight, while writing-wise, completely undeserving of it. And that's what I'm the most afraid of, because that would be the death of Ratchet and Clank. Not with a bang, a huge adventure, or even a giant flop, but just a quiet whimper of being sidelined. But maybe it's easier to have lazy writing with a character that is stagnant and that people do not remember better times for. Kinda like a fresh start. But for me, it would be just dancing on a grave on a great franchise. Wonderful heroes and amazing stories. So that was my list. What do you think? Do you have your own fears when it comes to the future of Ratchet and Clank? Feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to read your opinions. I'm also thinking about making another top 10 of my biggest hopes and wishes for Ratchet and Clank's future. Would you like that? Please let me know. If you want more of my Ratchet and Clank analysis and breakdowns, be sure to subscribe and check out other videos on my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye bye!